And good morning. Thank you for joining us. Don't know where you're tuning in from. Here in Iowa, it's a little frigid. I don't even have my phone to check out the temperature, but it is cold out there today. And I think it's cold across the U.S. But hey, with the right heart, you can have warmth no matter where you're at, right? So I am Tamara Scott. Thank you for joining us. We are here to bring you truth for our time. And if God expects you to live through it, He's directed you how to do it. We are going to talk about a variety of topics today. First, I do want to mention, if you're in the Iowa area, Martin Luther King Day is coming up, and Dr. Alveda King is coming. How incredibly special that is. I can't tell you how honored we are that on Martin Luther King Day, her uncle, Martin Luther King, celebrating, his honor, she is taking time. She's doing a ceremony in Alabama, I believe, and then she is flying here. And she will be with us that evening for a rally to bring together everyone. It's not a rally for any one group. It's not one group or another. It is all of us together. And we are so pleased and honored to have her here. She will be at the North High School at 6 p.m., North High School. And that's right in Des Moines, not hard to find. You can get online and find the address. It's on Holcomb, I think. She's also going to be doing several activities the next day with Concerned Women for America, one of the other groups I work with. She'll be addressing the legislature. She's to do the prayer in the chambers. And she'll be working with a group of pastors as well, a large group of pastors from all backgrounds, all races, all ethnic groups, all denominations. We are understanding that we may not agree on everything, but can we work together on the one thing in which our groups may agree with? And that might be how we can get some things done. We continue to constantly focus on our differences with people. All we do is grow those differences. And all we do is further that divide. So I'm very pleased that Dr. Alveda King is coming. Also, let me just say this. We gave the phone number out on the show on several of the web pages, and we had the phone number that we've used over the past several months, but the phone number is now 515-577-0. I've already messed it up. 515-244-0077. 515-244-0077. At any point you'd like to join in the conversation, we'd love to have you join in the conversation. Today we're going to be talking about testing. Testing Under Fire is an article that came out on Politico with Caitlin Emma talking about the number of tests in the school, the number of hours of testing. I believe it's Senator Alexander Lamar, or am I saying that correctly? Lamar Alexander. I have the most difficult time with his name, is working to slash the Lamar Alexander of Tennessee is making reauthorization of a law one of his biggest priorities. The testing is expected to take center stage. He plans to tackle the issue during a hearing early in the new year. Under serious consideration, slashing the number of federally required tests and even doing away with them altogether. So we're going to be going through this article, and then Morna McDermott from UnitedOpEd.com will be joining me, and we're going to be talking about how do you opt out? Why do you opt out? Is it dangerous to take your children away from a standardized test? Will it harm your child from potential scholarships, from potential college admissions, that type of thing? So we'll be talking to her. If you have your questions, we'd love to have you join us. She had a delay to the weather. She had to take her kids to school 2 hours later than normal, so she'll be joining us in just a little bit. But we'll go to this article on testing under fire very shortly. And also, let me just say a couple of things. Ryan, did you pull up the article on Dubuque? Can we see that? I don't have it on my screen. Let's see. Dubuque, Iowa. City Council bans sledding in most city parks. What paper is that out of? That's NPR. NPR News is reporting this, and I've seen it on several of the major news outlets across the nation as well in their morning programs. So KCRG is reporting that council members were not happy to pass the ordinance, but did so out of concern about liability issues. So this is interesting. A first-time offender will get a warning. A repeat offender could face a $750 fine. All right, so I have some thoughts on this. Do you have thoughts? I don't like to do this because two, one, I don't really care what people think. I always try to measure things with good, solid wisdom, one from a biblical perspective. But Ryan, couple things go through my head here. This is why I don't like government property.
Yeah.
Government owning the swimming pools, government owning this. And now if you don't have private property where you can sled, you can't sled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. You just told me about this morning, and I was thinking about it. Not too much, but the liability thing is pretty powerful.
Which I think is kind of funny when Des Moines itself owns a skating rink.
Mm-hmm.
I would guess there'd be some pretty good risks there.
Mm-hmm.
So Des Moines owns a skating rink. I'm curious if Dubuque has any ice skating rinks.
Yeah.
But your swimming pools, all of that have
liability
risk.
Mm-hmm.
They have liability. The other thing, and this just goes back to what I think is a biblical issue, the idea of suing everybody else for an injury you incur. Like you don't know there's a risk when you put that sled at the top of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
To sue everybody else, whether in private business owners, people suing them because they fell, unless it was a neglected issue, unless it was a dangerous, risky situation by an owner or by a government. I don't understand this attitude. Is that a biblical thing?
No, I don't think so at all. I think the issues come from two places. One, that, the government does own a little too much. There's no such thing as private property anymore. I mean, the government's able to tax us on all our property, so that means it's not ours really. Anything isn't really ours anymore.
When I see government hunting grounds, government shooting ranges,
mm-hmm.
I would rather see them privately owned, I think.
Yeah, and the government doesn't like that. Obviously, men like power, but really, if we had that if we were able to own our own sledding hills, it wouldn't be an issue, this liability thing, because obviously we wouldn't be able to legally hold the government responsible for what we do or to ourselves.
And so then the next comment's going to be, yes, but most people wouldn't be able to go sledding because they may not have a hill or know someone with a hill. Okay, but look, now in Dubuque, most people won't be able to go sledding anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually, the argument I can hear in my head would be that those folks who can't afford land, maybe that have, an acreage or somewhere out in the country where there might be a hill. So you wouldn't be able to do that unless you were wealthy and could have the land. That's the argument
or
I think
pay
I'm going to
someone
hear.
else.
Or pay someone else.
That's.
But this is going to set that exact same thing up, because now if you're wealthy and you can afford the fine, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you have favor with somebody and you think you can get by with it, why not?
Mm-hmm.
This is just so. Back when I grew up, we went up to the elementary school and sled down the hill. So would this not be allowed? That won't be allowed in Dubuque either, because that's not a city, but it's a community district. I'm curious about that. I just think it just shows the continuing one. First off, there is a biblical root of this, and every issue we deal with, there is a biblical root. The fact that we are a legalistic, what's the word I'm looking for? Litigious. Is it litigious? We want to sue everyone
from like litigation.
Litigation,
like that, yeah.
Yes. We want to sue over and recoup cost when we knew the risk. And like I said, I'm not talking about it when it was a neglectful issue or someone else's fault. That's not what I'm talking about. But when you put your child on that sled to head down that hill, you know there are possible risks. That's all I'm talking about. Anyway, I'll stop there. Other news of the day. Big vote yesterday in the U.S. House on leadership. 28 people voted for someone other, which would have taken it to a second vote. 1 vote short. 29 would have taken it to a second vote. We were 1 vote short. We, it's not me. Why would I care about this? I did put out a statement in one of my other capacities. because I think Republicans and voters sent a very clear message to Republicans. They put them in control. They sent a very clear message to Republicans. They put them in control. It was not, and I'm on air as already saying this, it was not a rah-rah Republican celebration. It was a stop the Democratic destruction of the Constitution, whether it's through this administration, executive law, bureaucratic law, regulations, or bills like the Cromnibus bill that fund a lot of the programs people don't agree with. It was desperation of voters saying, please stop what's happening. That's why I supported the vote of a change in leadership yesterday, and didn't get it. I think Republicans were given a opportunity, and I think they have a very short window to prove that they're serious, that they heard the voters, and they're ready for the challenge. And I'm not sure that yesterday helped in that matter. So just being honest, we're here to move things forward as a country. We the people, for the people, by the people. And that's what I think the people were saying. Okay. We're going to take a break here and go to our sponsors, give them a chance to be heard, and thank them for their sponsorship. We thank Crave for America for coming alongside, Crave for America, Christians for America. And we'll be right back after these messages, and our guest will be joining us shortly, Morna McDermott, and we'll be going through that article. It's on Politico.com. Caitlin Emma is the author. Republicans on the Hill are finding unusual common ground with teachers' unions about an overthrow of the annual testing mandate embedded in No Child Left Behind, but I would add, and then cemented in Common Core. And so we'll be back to talk about that shortly. The phone number will be 515-244-0077 if you want to jump in and join us. We'll be right back. I am Tamara Scott. Thanks for tuning in with us on this blurry, blustery, cold winter day, unless you're somewhere in one of the few warm spots in the nation. We'll just give you the warmth from our heart. We'll be right back after these messages.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
And thanks for joining us. One of our listeners just texted and said, I don't see the show. I don't know what to say because we're on, we're up, we're producing, and it shows you that we're online, right? So hopefully others will be able to find us. You can post to your friends if you would. Text out to your friends if they want to join in the conversation. We are on Webcast One Live, webcastonelive.com, each Wednesday at 10 a.m. And to be fair with you, next Wednesday I am out of town, but I will have guests. We are coming into the studio today and do some pre-taping. And one of my guests, his name is Kiboko. Have you ever met Kiboko, Ryan? Kiboko is from the Congo, and he will be sharing a story with us in America, we just don't get it. We have forgotten the fight that our ancestors had in giving us the freedom and liberties that we enjoy. Our rights are endowed by our Creator, this is correct, but China has the same rights we do. They just don't get to express them and enjoy them because their government doesn't protect them. Our government is supposed to protect them. We're losing them. We're allowing them to go away voluntarily, which just is unfathomable to me. I just don't understand it. But we have liberties and freedoms that don't allow us to even understand what other countries go through. So my guest will be sharing. His brother is a political prisoner right now in Congo. So we'll be talking to him, and that will be the guest next week. And we'll also be talking a little bit about the events coming up with Dr. Alveda King on Martin Luther King Day, 6 p.m. at the North High School. And then there's a luncheon the next day for pastors at 11:30 a.m. And we are toying with the idea. We wanted to do a breakfast early in the morning, and we've been waiting on the legislature to give us the times that she would speak, and we're kind of hamstrung, to be honest with you, on a couple of different issues there. So we'll get back to you on that the more information we get. All right. I want to get to the topic. Ryan's almost laughing at me today. There's so many things happening. I could be a little scattered today. That might be a polite way to say it. A little scattered. There's so many things coming at us. But let's talk this testing under fire. Testing under fire. The article. And one of the things I wanted to get to you, this goes back what they're talking about, No Child Left Behind, but I'm telling you it is that much heavier, that much more cemented in with Common Core. And in one of the paragraphs in this article, Oklahoma, first grade teacher sent a letter home this November to parents claiming that they spend 288 instructional hours on required test. 288 instructional hours on required test, or 72 days. So in your first grade classroom, rather than learning their math, their handwriting, which we're not even sure they really get good, thorough instruction in penmanship or handwriting anymore, 72 hours or 72 days a year of your school year are tied up in assessing your students, according to this first grade teacher out of Oklahoma. And we ask why schools are failing. My guest is joining me on the phone, Morna McDermott. Thank you for joining in the discussion today on testing and opting out.
Thank you so much for having me.
First, tell our listeners and our viewers where you come from. I don't even know what state you're in.
I'm in Maryland, and your listeners are going to laugh at this. I needed an extra 15 minutes to return home to the phone because we had a 2-hour school delay because there were 3 inches of snow on the ground. So I'm sure in Iowa that's the equivalent of July. But here in Maryland, that makes schools open 2 hours late. But otherwise, it's a lovely state.
Well, thank you and welcome on. And yes, the Iowa listeners totally understand what you're dealing with. I think we had several schools canceled today.
Wow,
because of
really
because of the wind chill.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even sure how cold the wind chill is. I'm not sure I want to know, but it's cold.
We're at 8 degrees.
Are you Ryan? Do you know what we are? He's looking it up. He'll tell us in just a minute. And I think with the wind chill, somebody said like 15 below or something.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, It's cold. You're just thrilled when your car starts. And you just, when your mom used to tell you, make sure you have your mittens and your gloves and your earmuffs. I'm telling my kids, make sure you have a sleeping bag and another set of mittens and food.
Wow, yeah. Yeah.
So no, thank you. And first off, your first priority is your kids. So didn't
Absolutely.
mind a bit waiting for your kids. It's why we do what we do is for all of us. I think with all the differences across ethnic lines, socioeconomical lines, religious lines, I think even across countries, different countries in the world, I think most people want what is best for their kids, with
Absolutely.
few exceptions.
Absolutely, and that's why we're fighting corporate reform because I fought it for 15 years as an educator and for the last 9 also as a parent, and it's amazing how much it's changed the stakes once I had my own children.
So you were an educator for 15 years.
I still am currently an educator. I was a K-12 special educator and regular educator for about 12 of those, and then I went back to school and did my PhD in curriculum and assessment. And I've been an associate professor. Well, I haven't been that for 12 years, but I've been a professor for 15 years at various institutions, working in College of Education and preparing beginning teachers.
Wonderful. So you are well qualified to talk about testing and assessments.
More qualified than the people that seem to be running the show, but I think most of us are more qualified than the people running the show. So.
Isn't that the case with a lot of things that we deal with in government?
Unbelievable.
And so, and okay, and here's the other thing. We're trying to get information out to parents, and most parents are just now hearing words like the Common Core or SBAC, Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, or PARC, Parents, Partners in Assessment for Readiness for College and Career. And so they feel so lost, but here's the deal. This came in not through your legislators or voted on by like most of those large political policy issues that should be through the legislative branch or through your local school board. This came in privately and through a lot of governors signing on in a chase for money in the race to the top. And we bypassed those normal stop gates we go through. And two, media-wise, I don't know how you ever believe anything you read in the media, because I've been quoted so many times lately, and it wasn't the conversation I had with the reporter, or it was a slant of the conversation I had with the reporter. So I don't know how we get information to people other than when they finally get ticked off enough, they start looking for it online, and you will find a bevy of information, one of those being UnitedOptOut.com. UnitedOptOut.com. And Morna, tell us a little bit about that website, and then I want to come back to this article.
Sure. United Opt-Out is a group that formed in 2011, in the August of 2011, and there were 6 of us. And some of our original organizers have changed positions. Some people have stepped down, and we've had new people step up. So now there's 7 of us all together, and Peggy Robertson really was the one who came up with the idea for it and reached out to the other 6 of us, or 5 of us at the time, and said, I want to create a Facebook site that helps parents know how to refuse or opt out of high-stakes standardized testing. Are you interested? And so all of us, said, yeah, sure, sounds great. We had no idea how big this was going to become. At least I didn't. I was like, oh, sure, like a little hobby. I'll do that on the side. I've always been opposed to standardized testing. This is right up my alley. And this whole world opened up of parents and of legislation and, corporate government backroom deals and this ugly, side of what was really, really going on with policy and legislation. So what our website aims to do is provide free of charge to all parents all the research that we can muster so that they are armed with the most amount of information to fight back. And some of that is just increasing awareness. Right? Just talking to other parents or talking to teachers, talking to members of your community, all the way up to, here's how you refuse the tests in your state. So there are varying degrees of refusal for all varying levels of interest or ability to participate.
Okay. I'm going to come back to this article just to give people some background. New York, last spring, 17,000 members on their Facebook page of opting out. They created a Facebook page to opt out. 17,000 members. As many as 60,000 students refused to take the test in New York. In Florida, Cindy Hamilton went on a similar crusade with the launch of Opt Out Orlando. Members of that group are talking with state lawmakers, urging them to consider testing in the upcoming legislative session. Said she has helped launch over 24 more opt-out groups. It is certainly a growing movement. I have interviewed Kathleen Jasper out of Florida. I have interviewed Meg Norris, who is a teacher who resigned over the whole testing issue in Common Core because she saw the destructive, what it was doing to her students. We've seen the video, and I should have pulled that up for today. The teacher explaining how the student was stabbing himself with a pencil because the testing was so frustrating to him. So Morna, I'm pleased to see the movement growing, but you say you were always against standardized testing. Why?
Because and particularly high-stakes standardized testing. The high-stakes nature of it makes it punitive to teachers, to children, to districts, oftentimes for test scores that are the result of things that go far beyond the student-teacher relationship, right? We could talk ad infinitum about the role of poverty and family and all these other factors that go into how well a child may or may not do on a standardized test. So making it high stakes automatically is problematic. Standardized testing is problematic if you go back into the history, and I won't talk about it very long, but really the origins of standardized testing go back to the eugenics movement in the early 1900s, at a time in which we thought that we could, by race and culture, and also gender and social class, determine who was fit to perform what tasks, and that we could use a standardized test in order to do that. So it's never, when people say we have a better standardized test, I'm always thinking there's no such thing. There really is no such thing as a qualitatively meaningful, student-centered standardized test. By its nature, it's faulty and it's questionable and harmful. So when we go from using it as a snapshot, like we did in the 1970s and 1980s, just getting a sense of how different states or districts were doing, and it was called the NAEP or the Iowa, appropriately. When you and I were children, we maybe sat down 3 times over the course of our entire schooling and took a test, and that was it. And you didn't know why you took it, you just took it, and then you were done. And we've gone from that snapshot to draining children intellectually, emotionally, and physically, and schools financially of all of their resources in order to test them even more so. So during No Child Left Behind, that was the first time that we'd ever implemented, really on a national level, high-stakes standardized testing. And that came in around Goals 2000, 2001. And since that wasn't bad enough, we decided to ramp it up a couple more notches and call it Race to the Top, and make it even worse. So it's decades old in its origins. It's just that we keep making it worse rather than better. And I think the reason why the pushback has increased exponentially over the last couple of years is because it's gone from being unjust and unfair to all children, and largely unfair to other communities, to being just unacceptable completely. They've made it so bad that it's just completely unacceptable across the board.
Okay, there's so many points here I want to talk to, and thank you. That was a terrific explanation. First off, I'm stymied. I would not have guessed that this would have come back to the eugenics movement of the early 1900s, but it makes perfect sense. We have seen it. We hear that, an Einstein will not make it under Common Core. A child who has a genius in one area but not in another area will be limited by this new testing and Common Core mentality that is in schools. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's as bad as it always was. What's worse is the frequency, the duration, the cost, the involvement of people who have no business being, in the classroom. All of those things have made it worse. So when we ramped up the high stakes, when we went from it being a NAEP snapshot of how different children are doing back in the 70s and 80s to a policy in which if a school does not perform at a certain cutoff score, those schools get closed, or those children will be retained, or they will not graduate. When you've added, or the teachers will lose their jobs. When you've added these real not life or death, but make or break stakes to the test, you've increased the stress of it to children exponentially as well. The other issues associated with it is the cost of the test.
Okay, hold on before we go to the cost, and write that down because I want to come back to the cost.
Sure.
But you just mentioned, several of these make or break situations, schools being closed, and the thing is, we've lost local control. This is what people don't understand. We're talking Common Core, federal program. People may tell you, like they are in Iowa Core, that you have local control. You will not have local control. You will have local compliance.
Yes.
Meaning you will have the opportunity to pick whatever color textbook you want or whatever maker of textbook you want, but it will still have to have the information on the test because otherwise your students will not test well. and they tell you can pick extra or you can teach something that's not listed, yes, you can, but only, what is it, 15%? Because it will not be included on the test either. So someone else outside your state now has control. You no longer have local control. And when we're talking, Morna, about closing schools, that will not be a local controlled decision.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, when people debate about things like Common Core and, fuzzy math, and we could debate about what's in the content of the core for hours. But sometimes I tell people, all right, well, but let's also zoom out and look at, who wrote the core standards. They were largely from testing companies and private for-profit or quote-unquote nonprofit corporations. So Achieve, ACT, the College Board, those individuals from those locations are the ones that wrote the standards because they are intimately attached to the high-stakes standardized testing. You cannot detach them. And the goal of the Common Core is so that we have nationalized testing. And with nationalized testing, you can do any number of things. One, you can profit off of children much better. There's a document that I read where Pearson and some other published testing companies said that it's far more profitable for all states to have one or two tests. It's more profitable for them than for 50 states to have 50 tests, right? Because if you only have to, it lowers your labor costs and your development costs.
Sure.
So there's a boon to the testing companies for us to have nationalized testing.
It's exactly why we see the same house in a development. Once the contractor figures out from the specs how much it costs to build said house, you will see them build 5 or 10 houses, the exact same plan with maybe a shutter change or a door change or a deck on the back.
It's profitable to them. It's profitable to the online edutech companies. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but the education technology companies, the privately run corporations like Apollo Corporation, K-12 Inc., any organization that can deliver material, whether it's assessments, teacher preparation, curriculum, anything online. They have said over and over and over again that the market right now is hot because the monies that come from the state, local, and federal government, Race to the Top, and other avenues, is going right through our school districts like a sieve and going right into their pockets because Common Core and the new tests are all being delivered from these private companies. They're not locally developed by teachers or educational experts. They're provided from these companies. And so they got in on the act because they said there's a lot of money here to be made by providing these resources. So, this is all part and parcel of a privatization movement. And that's not the same thing as like understanding a free market, like, we're selling sneakers or selling houses or, building restaurants. This is literally handing public education, which belongs to us, over to the decision-making agenda of private companies that are being funded on this corporate welfare dole from the federal government. So they're in league together. And it really renders the rest of us powerless.
All right. So I want to come back to one of my other questions, NAEP. For anybody listening out there, what is NAEP?
Oh, God. It's NAEP. It's, I want to look, I always just call it, it's the National Report Card, the National Assessment of Education Progress.
I think there you go.
Yes.
Okay.
And it used to be the snapshot that we would use to determine, how students in different states or districts were doing. And it is important to hold, schools accountable, especially in underserved communities. I support the idea that we are accountable to all children, and especially children living in, lower income neighborhoods and places that have not historically been provided with adequate resources. But testing them as a way to make policymakers accountable seems really absurd to me. It's making all those children accountable to the testing company.
Okay, so the whole thing with testing, and this is just a side note, maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but for me, the whole thing with licensing, we see hairstylists, they have to be licensed. What it is to me is a taxation, a regulation of an industry. It's how we keep a limited number of people in a field so that the field doesn't become too large or we don't it becomes less competitive. We have these, and here's a great example. You have to be licensed to be a hairdresser, right? You have to have gone to school and passed your test and has there anybody out there who hasn't ever gotten a bad haircut? These are licensed people. We've all had a bad haircut. So this whole testing thing, I think it limits what someone could do. I think you could have people who could be great architects, people who could be in the law school thing, the whole way we do the whole law school. What if you just took the bar? What if you were smart enough to take the bar and you did an apprenticeship rather than wasting all the money on law school? What if there was a shorter, I'm getting off, but the whole college education thing that every degree takes 4 years. I don't understand that. But to me, I think that this is how we start shuffling kids down the pipeline where we want them to be. And in doing that, we greatly limit the giftings and the skills that a lot of kids would have that we will never now see. Right.
And what they're playing with the idea of individualized learning, which is what you're speaking to right now. And it's a very slippery slope when you go down that rabbit hole, because not all children learn the same way. We know children are not standardized, and standardized tests standardize our children. And, if they don't fit the cookie cutter mold, they all get pushed to the side. And so, the damage to creative learning, the damage to a joy of learning, the damage to a child's self-esteem. And a lot of people say, oh, well, suck it up. Everybody needs to take tests. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. When I'm 18 and I took the SATs, that was fine. But that's not a justification to prepare them in kindergarten. Why don't I put my 7-year-old behind the wheel of a car so she can learn how to drive now? Because she's going to learn how to drive one day. It makes no sense to destroy meaningful, quality, love of learning, creative learning at a young age, because 10 years later they might take the SATs by choice, right? But the problem is when we talk about individualizing learning and online learning as a way to circumvent a standardized format for, like you said, preparing people for things, we also lose a lot because, again, the edutech companies come in and say, you don't need to take this history class. I'm going to deliver it to you all online. And now you've got a classroom of 25 children all sitting and staring at computers and not interacting and not engaging in, lots of hands-on and dialogue. And those companies that are delivering that curriculum to you are mining the data and the private information from our children for their own purposes. And that's another piece of the testing that's really important, is the data mining.
The data collection. We've talked about that on several shows. You're absolutely right. The data collection that will go to private entities, and we do not know whether it will be sold or not sold or how it will be used for marketing to profit private companies and sensitive information. Morna, this isn't just like your academic scores anymore. This is very invasive, personal, sensitive information.
Correct. I mean, one of the major players out there is a corporation called Newton, Knewton. They partner with Pearson and some other organizations, and they're one of the leading edutech companies that want to start delivering content online. And they partner with Common Core and all the other things, right? Because they saw the Common Core coming in, we're like, yes, bandwagon, let's get on it. The CEO of Newton has said that they will have more information on children than all of the servers like Google and Amazon and Yahoo put together. They can tell you whether or not your child learns math better before or after breakfast. I don't want any company having that kind of information on my child, and I don't care if they delivered the tablets from Moses as a curriculum. I don't trust it, and I don't think it's appropriate.
I can hear somebody now saying to you, wouldn't it be helpful to you to know if your child was better to learn before breakfast? Wouldn't that be helpful to you? I can hear them saying it to you.
Yeah, and I think a really good teacher knows that. I don't need a computer and some person that I don't even know on the other end of that computer from a corporation making that decision based on every keystroke of my child.
And I totally agree.
I know how my child learns because of the look on their face, whether or not their shoulders slump, whether or not, the tone of their voice, their movements in the classroom. That's what good teachers know how to do. They don't need a computer software program to tell them that.
And my thought is, God gave me my children. The Bible tells me if I seek wisdom, he will be good to give it to me. And so for me, I will trust like you say, my instincts as a parent. And again, Ryan and I talked earlier in the show, one of the cities here in Iowa is outlawing sledding because kids are getting hurt. I'll
boy.
do things the way I see fit. I am the authority of my child.
Right, correct. And I think that goes back to this notion of opting out, this testing refusal. I think it's a hot topic now because the testing is so much worse than it was 10 years ago, even though you could go back and see that, this didn't start with any particular administration. It didn't start with any particular side of the aisle. It's corporate and federal government mating like a zombie and a vampire, right? And they've created this strange new beast that none of us really understands because it's not business as usual the way that we grew up understanding, I don't know, just the way the world works.
Okay.
So you've got this corporate and federal blending. And so you find, like the article that you were citing, these strange bedfellows. I mean, that's what it says, that you very rarely see these alliances from across the aisle where Jeb Bush and Barack Obama are on the same page with something. And likewise, there are people from the far left and people from the far right who are looking at this and saying, no, we didn't sign on for this.
That's right.
There are a lot of people who would consider themselves progressive even, who have been railing against standardized, nationalized curriculum for almost 20 years.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to go to a break. Thank our sponsors. When we come back, I want to go through your website.
Sure.
One of the tags on there is no federal penalty for opt-out. So make note, because I want to talk about, is there really not a penalty? People are concerned about their kids not getting scholarships, not being admitted to colleges. Can they really opt their kids out without repercussions? Two, and maybe the schools, is there a repercussion to the school when we have so many opt-outs? Then we'll kind of go through your website. You've got talking points on there. So we'll come back and talk along those lines when we come back. But I thank you. Morna McDermott is my guest. Morna, M-O-R-N-A, McDermott, M-C-D-E-R-M-O-T-T. Morna, can people contact you? Is there a way through your website? How do they contact you?
Yeah, I'll even just give you my personal email if they want to speak to me directly. It's McDermott, McDermott Max, at yahoo.com. But we also have... if you go to our website, unitedoptout.com, there's a place where you can get a newsletter and you can write us an email and things of that nature if you'd like to address the group in general. So
we'll be talking right here in Iowa on United Opt-Out's website. They have regional folks to help you through.
Yeah.
And so we'll be talking what is the process, what is the repercussion, why I need to consider doing this, and kind of give people more of the action items as well. Morna, thank you for staying with me, and we'll be right back after these messages. I am Tamara Scott. This is Truth for Your Time, Truth for Our Time, and we'll be right back.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
And thank you for staying with us. And my thanks to Webcast One Live for making it possible for us to bring these shows to you. So much information necessary right now. As I said earlier, it's hard to get good information even in the media on this topic. It is becoming more relevant. Governor Bobby Jindal suing the national government over Common Core. Appreciate that leadership. Appreciate someone understanding it well enough to protect their state. See, governors are supposed to protect their state, not just take whatever the top hands down. And of course, that we should just do a whole history class on how it's supposed to work. It's the states coming together in D.C. It's not D.C. telling the states how it should be. So appreciate him doing that. Appreciate other friends of the show. I'm seeing the post and things go out right now. Alice Linehan, thank you for the tag. My guest is Morna McDermott. Morna, we are talking about UnitedOptOut.com, UnitedOptOut.com. On that website, you will see, I'm just telling you, work your way through this website. There are several guides and helpful documents on talking points and things that you can give you one information, but points of action. Morna, you've been in assessments. Your PhD was in assessments?
Curriculum and assessment.
Okay, so you are well noted. And the other point I want to make on this is you are an expert. You, because of your credentials, you have credibility in the educational world of academia to speak about this. But to every parent out there, as Morna and I were speaking earlier, you know your child. You know what your child needs. You do not have to be a, quote, expert to be.
No, and that word expert is so funny because the experts, like we said, that crafted the Common Core curriculum,
right,
that crafted these new tests, do not, don't seem to have a pedagogical background. They don't have a developmental background, and whether or not if they were parents, shame on them. Although a lot of these people who make these policies, their children don't have to suffer them. They go to private schools where they don't have to have high-stakes testing and Common Core curriculum. They go to other schools.
Right. You're right. David Coleman, for example.
For our children.
David Coleman, the author, what we call the architect of Common Core. His kids apparently go to a private school. Bill Gates funding much of Common Core. Did his kids in public school?
Of course not. I'd love to have him drop his kids off in the middle of Seattle, in the most underperforming school, and tell me that it's going to be just as good as any private school because he put the Common Core in there. I double dog dare him.
So while he's preparing our kids to be bubble, fill in bubbles on tests and be answer directed to be order takers. He's teaching his kids how to be the question givers.
Right.
Okay.
Right, exactly. I mean, the Common Core was designed with a lot of corporations in mind. I have a chart that I did a couple of years ago, and it shows you who funded, not who supports, because that's a different issue, but who actually gave the millions and billions of dollars. Bill and Melinda Gates, of course, a gimme. Number one answer in Family Feud is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But it's all these other corporations. It's Intel and Yahoo and Citibank and Achieve, which is a nonprofit that propped it up. And all these corporations that you're thinking, why on earth would they have anything to do with curriculum? Until you realize that they have a vested interest in preparing our children to be the workers that they want.
Right. All right. So Thank you. Let's get to the website, Essential Guides, Common Core Talking Points for Teachers, Common Core Talking Points in general, Common Core and High Skates Testing Brochure, Early Childhood Guide for Parents. If I have a child who's in high school, are they going to lose the ability to be competitive for scholarships and college admission?
I'm going to have to give you the answer you don't want, which is it depends. There are an increasing number of colleges that are not requiring those tests in order to be admitted into colleges. Sarista Smith, who is one of our organizers, her daughter refused all the high-stakes standardized tests in Florida. She graduated with flying colors. She's now at Howard University in Washington, D.C., doing very well. So there are universities that are looking at multiple measures. They're looking at multiple indicators in lieu of the standardized test. So it's going to depend on the college that you're looking at.
And so I think, too, there may be a little bit of a bubble, but used to colleges were not welcoming of homeschoolers because they didn't have the GPA, they didn't have the conventional progress report card. But when they learned how well students were doing on the whole as homeschooling students, many of them started recruiting those students. I think this will be the same.
And there's a big difference between you choosing as a young adult or your parents choosing for you. I would like to take the SATs. I'm now the age of 17, and I want to take the SATs because I know I want to do X, Y, or Z. That's a choice. Forcing first graders into 72 hours of testing.
72
is
days.
Near the same thing. Exactly, for days. It's nowhere near the same thing as being 17 and making that cognizant choice on your own to take a test because you want to do A, B, or C. Right?
Right. Yeah. So on your website, let's go through some of these talking points. You've made documents easy that people can print off. They can get information and send out. You even give people instruction on op-eds.
Yes. So we have 1- and 2-page, what we call talking point flyers, which are great to bring to PTA meetings or other parent groups because they're short, they're accessible, they're easy to reproduce, and they're understandable. You don't have to go too far in the weeds to really get how this is wrong.
If someone wanted to write an op-ed letter to their newspaper, would someone from your website, not saying you have to proof it or edit it, but would you be willing to give them talking points or work with them on their letter?
Yeah, if in addition to whatever we have available on our site, they just reached out and said, hey, can you look at this for me? Do you have any suggestions? We're always happy to work with parents. We get a lot of emails every day directly from parents. Here's my opt-out letter. Is it okay? Or can you help me with X, Y, or Z? And that's a lot of what we do is just person-to-person individual contact.
And I'm not seeing it right now, but I know you have regional people listed on your website. Yeah. So for each state, you can go and find out. There it is, state by state, opt-out guides by state. So I'm going to pick Iowa.
Yep, yours is Noelle, and it has her email on the top.
I see it right there. I teach em 1990@gmail.com. But for any other state in the nation, they can simply go to your opt-out guides by state and find out who it is that could help them as well.
And we try to update those regularly, which is a bear, I have to tell you. We did them the first time 2 years ago, and then everybody was now suddenly, SBAC or PARC, and it was like, oh my gosh, now we have to go through and some of it was, things were legislatively in the popper, they may or may not be an SBAC state. And I was like, well, we don't know what to put down. So always check back for updates. And that's why we try to put people at the state level in touch with state and regional assistance because things do change so quickly that I can't keep up personally with all 50 states.
Right.
So if you're from Nevada, I might go, here's the Nevada person, talk to her or him because they're going to have a better pulse on what's happening in their state.
Absolutely. Do you ever have conference calls between your regional coordinators?
Not yet, but that is a really good idea.
That's a great idea, isn't it? Because
we just do a lot of emails.
I hear you. And usually at 3 a.m. if it's anything like the Common Core friends I have, or the anti-Common Core friends I have. But it would be nice to know what's happening in California or another state because oftentimes we then can be on the lookout for it in other states.
And that's a great reason to join our Facebook site for your listeners who are on Facebook. Because you can post on there and say, hey, I'm in California. Is anybody else seeing this? And people will respond to each other, and it's a good way to share information across states.
And then I'm looking right now at the tag online testing and curriculum opt-out. Explain this tag to us.
All right, I'm at a different place on the website
It goes
than you
through
are.
urgent national update, opt-out on all online testing and online curriculum under age of 13.
Oh, the copper rule. Thank you. I have about 10 windows open. If you
I'm
can see me
sorry.
right now, and I'm
I didn't
jumping
mean to throw it
between
at
them. The copper rule, Lainey Hamison from New York is the one who really found this. God bless her for finding this thing. And I want to try to pull it up for you so I can read it accurately. But I can at least riff you through it while I'm finding the specifics. The copper rule is a regulation that says that parents have the right to refuse any online material. That includes testing or curriculum if it's delivered online. And so we believe that rule trumps any state or federal legislation to require that all children be tested. So if you've got, here we go. If you've got children who are taking the park, for example, that's going to be delivered more and more online. But it could be a state test. Student Privacy Matters. That's the name of the website that first found it. And you can refuse your child to participate in the online testing. So if you go to our website and you click on that, it's the urgent national update. You can read all the details. There's an opt-out form that you can click on. You can go to Student Privacy Matters for more details on it. But the long and the short of it is this federal regulation trumps testing and curricular requirements at the state or federal level for under the age of 13.
And I can't find it right now. I can't get my hands on it. But just recently, we talked about an article. The Arnie Duncan, I believe, has said they are going to change the author. They're going to amend the is it Elementary and Secondary Education Act,
ESBA,
to quote phase out state authority.
That'll be interesting. I haven't read it. I believe it's possible that he would say it. I think the pushback's going to be so enormous. It stands a snowball's chance of going through.
I think they've already done it through the regulation and bureaucratic, not legally, not constitutionally. This is the concern. David Barton was on this show November 5th, and I would invite anybody to go back and look at that archive. He starts at the 30-minute mark. But he is talking since 2012, this administration has put forth, he doesn't say passed, he says added, I think it's 3,800. I'm not to go back and check me out on that, but I think it was 3,800 new laws through regulation and bureaucracy. So we've lost the whole way we're supposed to do things through the legislature.
Please send me that link when we're off the phone. I would like to read that more closely because I've been trying to chase the legislation, and that in and of itself is a full-time job. I'm more of a corporate hunter. I like a corporate interest in children's personal matters like data. So I can tell you anything you want to know about the corporate end of it. The legislative end of it is a giant octopus on steroids.
I will try.
So you've got AESA, you've got No Child Left Behind reauthorization, you've got Race to the Top. The Race to the Top is the funding that attaches states or holds them in obligation to the federal government. The thing that most states and parents don't realize is it's really a pittance of money. So if you refuse the Race to the Top and all the nightmare that comes with it, and you think, oh my gosh, we're going to lose that money. First of all, it's not that much money. Most funding for schools comes from the state and local levels. Only about 10% maybe, I think, comes from the federal government. Plus, if you take that money's going to go to pay for the reforms that you wouldn't have needed the money for if you didn't take the reforms in the first place. You're not going to be able to keep it and build a playground or hire a new art teacher. It's going to go to the new tests and the new curriculum, so you're better off without it. So just reject the entire thing.
On that note, I may add, Michelle Bachmann said in 2012 on her presidential run, you would be ahead money because you lose money every time you send it to Washington and they send less back to you. You would be better off to give that same money to your local school districts and keep it all in your state. Along with that, Henry Burke has done analysis on each state. I think he used the Heartlands Institute. I think he used some of their numbers, but he did a state-specific analysis. If any of you would like that, Henry Burke will get it to you for your state on what it will cost you. And what he came up with was states who have refused the Common Core money will end up making money, saving money. It will cost them more money than anything they're getting from the state. We're now seeing that in Iowa. We warned of this. And Even though we're said not to have Common Core, we have /Iowa Core. Big education bill went through in 2012, and now our legislators are dealing with bandwidth expansion bills.
That's for the online technology to deliver everything to private corporations.
See, Jane Robbins warned us of this in a legislative hearing. And so we're trying to get the language of that bill to see where it's at and what it exactly does. But this is exactly what she said as well. The schools don't have the capacity for that online testing, and so they're going to come back and tax the citizens one more time to pay for something they don't want.
Right, and then that money goes to Newton or K-12 or McKinsey & Company or whoever it is that's going to manage all of this stuff. And it's really important, the legislative piece that we're talking about, because there's a lot going on, lots of shifts right now, with new Senate, new Congress, everything's changing. Be very, very careful of language. And I say this to anybody on any side of the aisle, look very closely at the language of whatever legislation's coming out. Look very closely at the connections that whatever politician is arguing for something that might sound good. Maybe it is. But be very, very careful, because sometimes, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's always preferable to get the federal hands out of education and put it back local. But that doesn't mean that just because somebody is at the state level or local level that they're not beholden to the same bad actors.
Right.
You see a lot of Lamar Alexander, who's talking about changing the No Child Left Behind bill. I read it closely, and I'm like, yeah, this sounds good. State and local authority and curricular decision making. But I also noticed that one of the key funders of his campaigns was Apollo Inc., which is an online technology company that I can guarantee you has interest.
What's the name of that? Apollo?
Apollo. APOLLO. So, yeah, I went and I looked, and I was like, well, this is an interesting tidbit of information. So I wonder how far we return things to a state level. Sounds great, but now is that legislation going to also then advocate that companies like Apollo deliver curriculum? So you've got to be really careful, because the devil's always in the details.
Isn't it, though? And this is why we said at the beginning of the show, you work with varying groups, different people who you may not agree with on everything. But you find the one thing you can work together on and move forward. And so you're right, eyes wide open, check things out. And maybe that is his bent, but we guard ourselves on the legislation that's proposed and make sure that that's not in there. Take the momentum.
That's the thing, is always look at it closely. Always go past anybody's sound bites, anybody's talking points.
Take the momentum that he's gained. And you know what? That's just a great advice anyway. As I said earlier in the show, again, I've been quoted in I don't know how many articles, and it was maybe what I said, but not quite how I said it or how it was intended. And so, yes, for everyone, look past the talking points, because whether it was clumsy or calculated, you just want to get to the depth of what people are saying. And it's unfair, frankly, to expect people to always say things perfectly in a short 7-second sound bite. So
it's very hard.
We're all human. We are just human. And so just go back and find,
I think that's really important. Parents need to find common ground with other parents.
Right.
I have, through this journey personally, revolutionized a lot of things that I thought I knew about my personal beliefs, my political beliefs, my understanding of other human beings, because I had to be willing to detach from things I thought I knew or the way I thought I understood things, and let the facts renegotiate my opinions on them. So I've got friends now from every spectrum of the aisle you can imagine. And it came from realizing, wow, you've got Arnie Duncan saying this is a civil rights issue, and he's trying to call this a liberal agenda. And I just know that's not true, because he's selling those kids in those city schools up the river to, these billionaire charter corporations. And that's not civil rights. It's a lie. But he's got them on board. And so people who consider themselves liberal are looking at them going, yeah, I'm moving away from that. And then you've got people from the right who are very, strong advocates of maybe free market and a lot of, local decision making and things like that. But then they look at something like, these corporations coming in and driving what the federal government is doing and going, yeah, that's not what I meant by free market. I don't want you using my children as a product.
Right.
So we're all kind of moving away from what we thought we knew and forming new alliances under new paradigms.
So we covered the fact that you do not have repercussions coming. You can opt out federally. No federal penalty for opting out.
Well, there might be federal grants that require it. The devil's in the details. I think a parent has to look at what it is their child's applying for, and look at the specific language of the requirements for the scholarships if they're looking at a scholarship, or if they're even trying to get their kid into a gifted and talented program in school, and the school says, well, you have to take the test. That's not precisely true. You have to demonstrate on multiple measures that your child is able to do the work. And so you could, as a parent, go back and say, I want the other multiple measures, the grades, the schoolwork, the projects, all these different assessments. My child doesn't need to take this test to qualify for that class. So parents have to look at the specific language and not rely on what they're being told as necessarily being the truth.
Morna McDermott has been my guest. We are out of time. Morna McDermott, MORNA, MCDERMOTT. Morna, please give the email again one more time.
My personal email, it's MCDERMOTTMAX at yahoo.com.
And you also can find her on the website, UnitedOptOut.com. UnitedOptOut.com. If you will register on that website and ask for someone to contact you, I did, and they did very quickly.
If you want to know anything more about some of the things that I've brought up specifically as well, I have a blog.
Oh, please, yes.
Education Alchemy, EducationAlchemy.com. And a lot of the things that I've been mentioning here are available there. I've done numerous posts on the Common Core in particular, and federal corporate interests in particular. So if you want to know more about any of those things, the details are all available on that website.
Education, the word education, alchemy, ALCHEMY.com, correct?
Correct.
All right. So we are out of time, but again, if you want more information, UnitedOptOut.com. Click on your state, see who can help you, see what more you can learn, ask a question on the website. You are an advocate for your child. You are the stopgate, you are the protector, you are the shepherd, you are the one who is to set them on their path. And whether they're in public school, private school, or homeschooled, you are responsible. You are the authority, and someday you'll answer, in my opinion, my belief, what the Bible tells me, you'll answer at the throne of God for how you've handled those gifts, the only gifts you can take to heaven with you. So do whatever you can to protect them, not just here on earth, but for eternity. My guest has been Morna McDermott. Morna, will you come another time? There's so much more we could talk about.
Oh my gosh, absolutely! I mean, this is fun, and so there must be something wrong with me. But there are so few places to articulate these things, especially in the media, that it's always welcome when people invite us to speak to these issues. Because if parents don't know these things, they can't make the changes that we need to see.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. We will be back.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. And anytime you see something come up, give us a call. If there's something we need to get out to listeners, give us a call. For those of you listening, you are responsible. You are the change that needs to happen. The Bible tells you where you seek wisdom, you will find it. If you call on the Lord, He'll give it to you. And I would tell you, be encouraged, but never be complacent. Thanks for staying tuned.